At the moment, Spider-Man's future in the MCU looks very unclear. We're gonna run on the assumption that Sony and Marvel will come to some sort of agreement to keep Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the MCU. Spider-Man's rogues gallery is huge. While most villains just appear for one-off issues or the occasional story arcs, Spider-Man's villains hugely change the status quo. Spider-Man has had a lot of his classic villains appear on screen already, but the accuracy to which they've been recreated has been mixed. Let us know what your favorites are, and remember to push that red button to subscribe for more.
The terrifying, the deadly, the amazing Spider-Man!
Chameleon. It's surprising that in spite of being Spider-Man's first villain, the Chameleon has yet to appear in a Spider-Man movie. We think that definitely needs to change. The Chameleon is usually a henchman for other villains, but has been a constant presence in Spider-Man lore. He's one villain that's really able to make life difficult for the Wallcrawler. Not only is he able to disguise himself as anyone, making him very difficult to fight against, but he can actually pose himself as Spidey. That being said, Chameleon works best when he's in stories in which he's not the main villain. The Chameleon is really at his best when teaming with the Green Goblin, specifically Harry Osborn, and Dr. Octopus. All it takes is for one villain to find out Peter Parker's identity, and then they can hand that information over to the Chameleon, and he can run riot, doing everything he can to make Pete's life hell. When it comes to casting, there are so many potential actors to choose from. What we really need is someone with a sneaky, sly edge to him, but with enough menace that he can be a believable, intimidating threat. Which is why our top pick for the Chameleon is Danish actor Mads Mikkelsen, best known for his role as Hannibal in the TV series of the same name, and more recently for his role in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. While he's not Russian, we're pretty sure he could adopt the accent with very little trouble. He has everything you could want to play the character.
Thanks again for freeing me from my prison, Spider-Man.
Hydra Man. Hydra Man is probably the lowest profile villain on this list. While everyone knows the likes of Electro and the Green Goblin, Hydra Man is often forgotten as another Z-list villain. We think this is pretty unfair though, as there have been a lot of villains who have had little presence that have later gone on to become great characters. We think he could be a great fit for the movies though for one reason: the visual effects opportunities he provides. While Spider-Man 3 wasn't exactly a beloved movie, everyone agrees that the special effects for the Sandman were brilliantly done. We'd love to see those sorts of effects recreated again with water. We've had characters of a similar texture, like the T-1000 of Terminator fame, but Hydra Man himself hasn't been brought to live action. Not only would he look incredible on camera, but with a good writer, he could be made to be a very credible threat. After all, Spider-Man may be a tough guy, but he can still drown like any other man. Hydra Man is more dangerous than the majority of Spidey's foes. While Green Goblin is certainly dangerous, he can't envelop you in water and drown you like Hydra Man can. What we really want to see is a fully realized Hydra Man brought to life with the best special effects that Sony can afford, with as strong an actor playing him. Someone like Joel Edgerton, who has an everyman vibe to him, to make it all the more surprising when he attacks.
I'll feed on you. Want to feed on me? You don't know where I've been.
Morbius, the living vampire. First appearing in The Amazing Spider-Man number 101, Morbius is a villain that Spider-Man shares with a great vampire hunting superhero, Blade. Not only would a movie with Morbius be a great place to introduce Blade to the MCU and set him off in his own movies,
Cries of the Night Stalker are like music to my ears.
but Morbius is an awesome character in his own rights. Morbius is dubbed the living vampire because despite his many vampiric qualities, he's not actually a true vampire. He's a living man who is the victim of a failed science experiment. He's constantly trapped, not being a normal human, but not truly being a vampire. Morbius would be a great character to truly bring out the horror elements of Spider-Man that have been present throughout the comics, but never truly implemented in film. While writers like Todd McFarlane wrote Spider-Man with heavy horror influence, with very macabre art, it seems that the movies just aren't willing to take that step. Morbius would hopefully push them in that direction. While Spider-Man isn't a straight horror comic, there are numerous villains such as the Lizard, Vermin, and Morbius himself that push it towards that genre. Not only would he be a great villain for a dark movie, but he can serve as spin-off fodder and help to tell a good story.
Who the heck are you?
A real hero, you freak!
Scorpion. Honestly, we're more surprised that Scorpion hasn't been in a movie yet. He's probably one of the best known crony villains that Spider-Man has. While he's typically been a kinda dumb, slight improvement over Rhino, that doesn't mean he couldn't be made to be more in a movie. Mac Gargan, while best known as Scorpion, has also been Venom for a period of time, which opens up a lot of windows for potential storytelling if the movies decide to follow the comics. It's easy to imagine a story about Scorpion growing sick of constantly being defeated and turning to the Venom symbiote in order to get one over on Spider-Man.
If you want to join the Fantastic Four, you're in the wrong place.
Even if Sony and Marvel don't choose to go down that route, it's easy to imagine a movie with Scorpion as a main villain, or possibly even in a duo with Rhino. While villains like Green Goblin attack Spider-Man's mind, Scorpion is quite happy to slug it out with the wall crawler, which is something we think we should really see in a Spider-Man film. While it's great and all watching Spider-Man web up his enemies, we'd really like to see a villain like Scorpion just trading punches with him. Spider-Man's been in some great acrobatic action sequences, but we really like to see him in a real gritty fight like he had in the first Spider-Man movie. Carnage. There had to be at least one symbiote on here, so we decided to go for the most unstable. While we don't know if Carnage would follow on from Venom, or if the MCU would tweak his backstory in order to make him come first and then spawn Venom, we would love to see Carnage in a movie, possibly inspired by the Maximum Carnage saga, which, despite receiving poor reviews, certainly brought fame to the character. We'd love to see Carnage come in and raise the stakes in what has so far been a very family-friendly movie franchise. Carnage could actually scare younger kids, and our only concern is that because Carnage is such a dark character, that Marvel wouldn't want to include him in the MCU, as they have avoided dark material in their movies thus far. But we can't see any Netflix TV show having the budget to create Carnage and do him justice. We think that in a movie, he could look great, especially with the improvements in special effects and the groundwork already being somewhat laid down in Spider-Man 3 with Venom. Not to mention, if the clones are established in this universe, there's always the opportunity to use Spider-Carnage, which is something that will never not be kind of cool.
Who dares defy me now?
The Kingpin. While the Kingpin is in the MCU, he's yet to appear in a movie, thus making him eligible for this list. The Kingpin is already considered to be the MCU's best villain. His scheming, calculated persona and fits of violence make him truly terrifying. However, despite being Daredevil's nemesis on the hit Netflix show, he's actually a longtime Spider-Man villain. With Vincent D'Onofrio, we already know that we get a great performance, and he'll really be someone that looks imposing next to Tom Holland's Spider-Man. The most exciting thing about bringing the Kingpin to the MCU, however, is the possibility of it bringing Daredevil over too.
You took that away from me! You took everything! I'm gonna kill you!
Take your shot.
With talk of a Daredevil Spider-Man crossover for a long time, it would be incredible for the famous pairing to finally team up on screen. There are already a lot of plot opportunities from that alone, but even without Daredevil, the Kingpin is a menacing and pre-established threat. With his operatives working everywhere, Peter Parker and his family can never sit knowing that they're safe, as the Kingpin could be around literally any corner. Vincent D'Onofrio brings something very unique to his version of the Kingpin, his general twitchiness and awkwardness around people. This is a far cry from the very confident and charismatic Kingpin of the comic books, but it gives him and Spider-Man something to share in common. While we're not saying that the two should sit down and talk about being awkward, it's certainly interesting that the Kingpin will be able to look at Spider-Man and see a younger, better version of himself. Tombstone. Here's a villain we bet you didn't expect to see. The albino assassin Tombstone is usually portrayed as something of an enforcer, but we want more from him in a movie. What we really want to see him shown as instead is a mob boss, similar to the Spectacular Spider-Man TV show. We don't just want him to sit back and let other people do his bidding though. We'd really like to see him in a role somewhere between the Kingpin and Cottonmouth from the Marvel Netflix show Luke Cage. We want him to be someone who's completely willing to get their hands dirty, like the assassin that he is, but with the dignity and power of a mob boss. It'd also be pretty cool to use this as an opportunity to bring the Punisher into a Spider-Man movie. Tombstone's first major storyline heavily involved the Punisher, so it'd be cool to pay homage to it here with the two facing off against one another with Spider-Man caught in the middle. Hobgoblin. Remember what we said about those horror elements in Spider-Man? Well, take a look at this. Hobgoblin is terrifying. Hobgoblin would be both a great follow-up or predecessor to the Green Goblin, depending on whether the movie uses Roderick Kingsley's comic book origin or Jason Philip McIndale's from the animated series. In the comics, the Hobgoblin comes about due to his obsession with the Green Goblin. It goes even further when he decides to modify the Goblin's costume and take the glider and replace the Green Goblin. If the movie went with this origin for the character, it would certainly be the creepier of the origins. The animated origin is perfectly serviceable too, with Norman Osborn and Oscorp supplying the Hobgoblin with his technology. This gives Hobgoblin some time to be villainous before Osborn finally uses the tech for himself and takes over. The only drawback to the Hobgoblin is how tied his mythology is to the Green Goblin, which which might make it weird for longtime Spider-Man fans to see him in a movie without Osborn present. On the other hand though, it'd be really cool to see the Hobgoblin and his creepy old mask brought to life. While Sam Raimi's Spider-Man film was originally planned to have a prosthetic mask, one that looked pretty good on camera, so far none of the three interpretations of the three Green Goblins have really come that close to the original comic character. The Hobgoblin might be able to break that chain with a cool mask just like the comics, and a slightly better look to separate him from being just the Green Goblin all over again.
I am Mysterio, and I am putting Spider-Man on notice.
Mysterio was originally set to appear in Spider-Man 4 alongside the Vulture back when Raimi was making Spider-Man movies. It was long rumored that Bruce Campbell would play Mysterio. The fan theory was that Bruce Campbell had secretly been playing Quentin Beck all along, spying on Spider-Man throughout the Raimi trilogy as he cameoed throughout the series.
It helps maintain the illusion.
Unfortunately, Spider-Man 4 was never made, but Mysterio has long been sought after by Marvel fans. He gets some of the coolest visuals, and gets the coolest levels in the Spider-Man video games. There's very little not to love about a character whose whole gimmick is creating illusion. Not only would it make for fantastic action sequences and trippy visuals, it would also give Spider-Man a foe unique from any of the villains he's fought in movies so far. With the exception to the first Spider-Man movie, none of Spider-Man's villains have tried to attack him mentally, which is why Mysterio would be so perfect for a new movie. He also has a distinct look that is really nothing like any other supervillain in the movies. The green-clad, caped man with a fishbowl on his head is iconic and distinct. It won't be as easily forgotten as the roster of villains in the MCU so far. The Spider-Man movies have been pretty good at giving the Wallcrawler a new villain to fight in each movie, with only Harry Osborn's Green Goblin appearing twice. We'd love to see the trend continue with Mysterio, who can be both funny and charismatic, as well as mystical and unsettling.
Fool. No prey escapes Kraven.
Kraven the Hunter. For our final entry, we have to go with Kraven. The key character in Kraven's Last Hunt, generally considered to be the greatest Spider-Man story ever told, Kraven has everything you need in a villain. Not only is his gimmick of being a hunter obsessed with the most difficult prey unique, but his code of honor and raw physicality make for a noble yet intimidating villain. What we would really like is for an actor like Jeffrey Dean Morgan or Liev Schreiber to take on the character, as it needs both a grizzled, intimidating look, but also intelligence. While Kraven's Last Hunt as a storyline works best with Kraven being pre-established, we can't see Hollywood being that good at constructing its movies and plot points. So we think that Kraven should be adapted along with his Last Hunt straight away. The story is one of an older man finally achieving all he wants in his life, proving not only that he's the greatest hunter, but that he's also greater than Spider-Man.
There you are. Such agility, such grace. Truly prey-worthy of Sergei Kravinov.
That, combined with truly shocking imagery of Spider-Man having to dig his way out of his own grave, and a subplot involving the ever-dangerous villain Vermin, and you've got the makings of a great story. While never considered Spider-Man's arch-rival, he got the best storyline, and we think it's high time that Marvel finally adapted the character.
Excuse me, I'm looking for some guy named Stan Lee.
What? Spider-Man?
Well, that's all we have time for today. Spider-Man has a huge roster of A-list villains. Who's your favorite Spider-Man villain? Which one do you want to see in the movies? We're still holding out on a Kraven movie, but be sure to comment below and let us know what you want to see. And as always, subscribe to CBR for more.